إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته and welcome to Fiqh Hour. I know it's going to catch you off guard a little bit because we're not on Wednesday, we're on Tuesday. The time is the same. Obviously, it is a special in the sense that tomorrow is Eid. And obviously, this morning after Fajr, you started with your Takbir Tashriq. Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar wa lillahi alhamd. And you will continue to do that for 23 salahs. That's not including the Eid Salah, which will be tomorrow morning, which means the 5 of Tuesday, the 5 of Wednesday, the 5 of Thursday, the 5 of Friday, and then obviously the 3 of Saturday. So after Asr will be the last time that you will make your At-Takbir Tashriq. Okay, so that's already been explained. So today we're just going to wrap things up really, because we agreed to do 5 episodes. We must fulfill that, otherwise it would look a bit strange not to finish things off. And we're literally at the end now of performing Hajj. For those of you who are, let me just send a message to our chaps on the group. So they know we are live. Yeah. So for those that have been following, sorry, for those who are on Hajj, you are now, what time will it be there now? It will be 6 p.m. at 4. So they should be already in Muzdalifah right now. You know, it's late at night. They should be in Muzdalifah, and inshallah the days of Hajj are moving with some pace as well. And what they will be doing soon is pelting the Jamarat. Okay, on day 1 they will pelt, I'm just getting the notes up. On day 1 they will pelt just the large Jamara, and then on the that will be on the 10th. On the 11th they will pelt all 3. And on the 12th, they will pelt all 3. And if they decide to stay an extra day, or they happen to still be in Mina after Maghrib, then they will also pelt on the 13th. Okay, so these are the 3 days that they will pelt in order to complete their pelting of the Jamarat, which is a ritual act. Now, in terms of the ritual act, where's its origin, you might ask? Its origin goes all the way back to the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, we've spent a lot talking about Hajar alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam. I delivered a lecture just on the weekend talking about Hajar alayhi salam and the pivotal role she played in fulfilling this act, a motherly act, a motherly sacrifice. And at that time, obviously, it became a kind of brought into the Sunnah by the Prophet ﷺ, because the Prophet ﷺ adopted it. And post the Prophet ﷺ, we continue to do that both as part of our Umrah and part of our Hajj. And Ismail ﷺ is actually, even though our focus tends to be on Ibrahim ﷺ, obviously the building of the Kaaba, we speak about him, the leaving of his wife and son in Mecca, which was a desolate desert area. We talk about Ibrahim alayhi salam. And also when we're making the sa'i, we talk about Hajar alayhi salam. And similarly, when we speak about the Jamarat, again, we're going to speak about Ibrahim alayhi salam. But the only kind of common denominator, so to speak, because I'm currently working on inheritance, wa alaykum salam, the only common denominator throughout of this is actually Ismail alayhi salam, who gets forgotten because obviously he's a child. And he's not the main character, so to speak, in those stories. So, for example, when Hajar alayhi salam gets abandoned in Mecca, Ismail alayhi salam is a baby. He's also abandoned. When Ibrahim alayhi salam is building the Kaaba, then he builds it with Ismail alayhi salam. And now when we get to the sacrifice, which obviously we had a conversation with a colleague who rang or to WhatsApped a couple of days ago saying, now because of the Saudi system, it's very difficult to determine when the actual slaughter is done. Now, you might be asking why that's an issue. It's an issue because according to the Ahnaf, the Hanafi school, maintaining the order between the acts, which is pelting, and then the slaughtering, okay, then the shaving, that order needs to be maintained between those three. And if you don't know that your animal has been slaughtered or hasn't been slaughtered, you cannot shave. Now, in days gone by, what you would do is one of your party would go to the place of slaughter, and they would inform you that the animals have got slaughtered, shave your heads, everything is good. Now, obviously, it's a little bit more concealed and it's difficult to ascertain. So there is a fatwa that has been issued by Mufti Taqi, in which he said that if it becomes difficult to ascertain as to when the slaughter was done, then out of necessity, one can not maintain the order and just do. Now, it's a pretty obvious response. What I mean by obvious, in the sense that if you don't know, you can't just sit there forever, for days and weeks and months thinking, okay, has it been done? Has it not been done? Has it been done? Has it not been done? So you have to do something. So you act on what we call ghalib al-dhann, and you obviously get an idea of when the time frame is for the slaughter. And once that time frame has elapsed, then you shave your head and let that be. And if, unfortunately, you have obviously gone out of sequence, then there's no harm. Okay, there's no harm. So he applies the principle of darura. He applies the principle of ghalib al-dhann in order to determine that. But just before the slaughter, which again involves Ismail al-Islam, so bearing in mind the leaving of Hajar al-Islam and Ismail al-Islam, he's involved. The building of the Kaaba, Ismail al-Islam is involved. And also when it comes to the slaughter, Ismail al-Islam is involved. So he's a common theme throughout. So this comes about when Ibrahim al-Islam says to his son, that are in a vision, in a dream, and obviously in a dream is a prophecy to the Prophet ﷺ, to any prophet. He says that I've seen in my dream that I'm slaughtering you. What do you say? And Ismail ﷺ responds by saying, do as your Lord has commanded you, or words to that effect, meaning that this obviously is revelation. And Nabi, when they sleep, they receive revelation in their sleep. And therefore, do as you've been ordered to do. And as Ibrahim al-Islam is taking Ismail al-Islam, and some reports mention Hajar al-Islam, and obviously we have to rely on tariq here. The soundness of the hadith is not that strong. And they take the three of them are moving, and he is affected by shaitan, or the whisperings of shaitan. And he's told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to pelt the shaitan, to do a physical act, to say that you're not going to follow the instructions of shaitan, that he is going to try to misguide you, is going to try to work on your emotions. So what type of emotions could shaitan work upon? Well, as you've heard in numerous lectures, both with me and with other shuyukh, you would have heard that the Ibrahim al-Islam was an exceptionally old man when he had his first son. And then obviously he's followed quite closely by Isaac al-Islam. So to have a son after so long is one thing. It's even more so daunting than when they're actually son you've been asked to slaughter. So it's quite a big ask to put on a person. But the Anbiya are tested more than anybody else are tested. And therefore he took the test in his stride. Now, some reports mention, obviously, that Hajar alayhi salam was also, or shaitan made effort to influence her as, look, you're the mother, this is your child, you've been through so much for this child, and now that this child is actually becoming independent and becoming a man and being able to walk on his own 2 feet and deal with his own issues, you're going to slaughter the child. And also, obviously, one can imagine Ismail al-Islam himself, this is what's your father doing. But each occasion, Prophet Ibrahim al-Islam is recorded to have taken 7 pebbles and cast them in the rough sort of direction. Like, for example, when we're praying salah, or when we're going to sleep, and we experience a bad dream, or shaitan is influencing us in our salah, then we're supposed to dry spit, basically blow air, okay, towards the left. That's to do something physical to detach ourselves from shaitan's whisperings. So it's a good method. So whenever shaitan is impacting, that's why we see, the Prophet ﷺ advised that if you become angry, then, if you're standing, sit down. And if you're sitting down, lie down. Or get a glass of water and have a drink of water. So it's as though you're trying to physically break your chain of thought, because your chain of thought is like a car with no handbrake on it. And it's you just want to do something, somebody's been abusive to you, you want to reach out and slap them, or you want to reply, or you want to retort back, or you want to do something. And shaitan is obviously oiling those wheels. He's blowing in those sails. He's, throwing fuel on that fire. So, any other analogy I can think of. So your maqsad, or your purpose, is to break this chain of thought, because this chain of thought, like a domino effect, is going to push you till you do something that you regret. And you'll only regret it once you've done it. Just speaking earlier to somebody about a divorce mas'ala. So the husband and wife are, playing ping pong. He's saying, she's replying back. He's saying something back, and the argument is escalating. Okay, escalating. Voices are raising. Voices are getting higher, and it's escalating. And the argument, or the point being made, is more severe than the point before. And as I said, shaitan is, blowing those sails. He's oiling those wheels. He's putting fuel on the fire. What he wants to do is get the husband to eventually say, I'm divorcing you. Then suddenly you watch, the ship stops sailing, the car stops moving, the fire goes out almost immediately. And that's because shaitan has moved away from the argument. And as he's moved away from the argument, a person's senses come back. When his senses come back, the first thing he does is absolute regret. So we should also do something physical, like Ibrahim al-Islam is taught to pick up 7 pebbles, or have 7 pebbles, and cast them onto shaitan. And he's not picking up boulders or rocks or anything. They're usually sort of chickpea size. And in some cases, it mentions you sort of flick it, like you flick a coin. Okay. And some is mentioned that you just throw it, cast it. So the purpose is it's not an act of destruction. It's not an act of trying to, beat somebody up. It's an act of doing something physical which stops this chain of thought. So he does that, alayhi salatu wasalam, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, in 3 places. So when we visit the haram and we have performed Hajj, then before we go to slaughter the animal, which is what we're about to do, because we were, Allah's rahmah came upon us, when, obviously, go back to the story of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and Ismail alayhi salam. When Ismail alayhi salam is laid down and Ibrahim alayhi salam is about to perform the sacrifice, he's told to stop, because the aim wasn't to cause harm to Ismail alayhi salam. The aim was to test the love that Ibrahim alayhi salam had, and to also for us to demonstrate to us that you're only going to reach that level of taqwa, that level of purity, that level of spirituality, when you're willing to sacrifice the dearest thing to you. And if you're willing to sacrifice the dearest thing to you, which now for most people, the dearest thing to them is money. And if a person is willing to sacrifice that, like now with, the days of Udhiyah upon us, tomorrow is going to be the first day of Udhiyah. And in the Ahnaf, it is wajib that if you have sufficient wealth, even in the days of Hajj, in the days of Eid rather, you're supposed to slaughter an animal. That is the purpose. You're supposed to slaughter an animal. And we start kind of, like financially calculating that. If I do that in the UK, that's like £300. Oh, goodness me. But if I do it in, I don't know, Pakistan, it's going to be £100. And if I do it in Nigeria, it might be £20. Or if I do it in India, it's £14. And we kind of like look for a bargain. Now, of course, if there's constraint circumstances where you just meet the mark of udhiyah, or you reach that level of nisab, then one might be a little bit savvy in that regard. But if a person is good, mashallah, then what he should be doing is the greater sacrifice he can make, the better for him. Why make a small sacrifice? Why not make a greater sacrifice? Don't forget, Ibrahim al-Islam was told to sacrifice his son, which was the most valuable thing, the most valuable being to him. Now, in the days gone by, what people were supposed to, we heard a lamb from where I live. We heard a lamb, my wife was saying, I'm sure that's a lamb, it's not a cockerel, because we do hear a cockerel sometimes. There's somebody around here has a farm in their back garden. Well, most definitely in the last few days, I've heard a lamb. There's no lie, the baying of a lamb. And what you have, for example, is what you're supposed to do. Obviously, we don't encourage that now because of farming regulations and diseases, is you're supposed to, after the days of Eid, is to take a lamb in and nurture it, raise it, even give it a name, and become accustomed to it, a bit like a pet. Okay, a bit like a pet. So you grow an affinity to it, you grow closeness to it, you're going to feel its absence. And then as the days of Eid are coming along, you now need to slaughter this animal. So there is a little bit of sadness, there is a little bit of loss, there is a little bit of, little, I don't know, whatever you're going to call it, little Freddy, okay, is going to get slaughtered and we're going to eat him, right? So you feel that, okay, you feel the loss. Now, the only, like I said, the only loss we feel is a financial loss. But even then we're being, as I said, a little bit savvy and trying to make sure that we minimize that loss. So feel it. You're supposed to feel it. If you don't feel your udhiyah, then in reality, is it a qurban? Yani a qurbani, as we say in the Urdu language. When a person gives qurbani, okay, they're sacrificing something, they're giving something up. Of course, it comes from the root letters of qurb, the Arabic word which means to draw close to Allah. So that's what, in reality, what we're doing is because what is sacrifice? Sacrifice is the giving up of something for something better. The giving up of something which you like for something that you like more, okay? A good example is going to the gym or working out or going for a run, okay? Nobody really likes it, apart from obviously my son. Nobody really likes going for a run, okay? Who likes going for a run? Why would you go for a run for? Plodding on the same road for 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers and coming home and sweaty and all the rest of it. So what do you sacrifice? You sacrifice your time, you sacrifice energy, you sacrifice your body because your body comes back tired. For what? For a fitter body, a healthier body, longevity in your life, a better quality of life, a fitness, a strength. Okay, so we sacrifice one for the other. Our broader understanding of Islam is that we kind of sacrifice this life for the hereafter. So we forbid things upon ourselves in this life. We don't drink alcohol, we don't do zina, or we don't get engaged in illegal transactions. Why? So that obviously we can have whatever we want in the hereafter, because everything is halal in the hereafter. So something which is sacrificing, qurbani, is something which is inherent in our faith, is something we should be very familiar with. And that's really what we're doing. So once the jamarats, have been pelted, then what we're doing is the qurbani I've mentioned, the sacrifice I've mentioned. So they would obviously do that. The tamattu and the Quran would do that as a show of gratitude, as a show of thanksgiving. And also the ifrad would do that as well. And obviously, if people have unfortunately come unstuck and done something wrong, then there's also dam to give as well, which again is the slaughter of an animal. And that's all done in the haram. Once that's done, and as I said, we've got the fatwa, we've got the position that if you've tried your utmost, you've tried hard, you've tried your best in order to get to understand when the slaughter has happened, but even after all your investigations, even after all your research, even after all your phone calls, all you have is a broad idea it's going to happen between 7 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. And that's all we can tell you. When between those times, we don't know. So fine, wait till 2 in the afternoon. Okay, wait till 2 in the afternoon and now shave your head. And if it happens that you ended up doing it before it was slaughtered, it's not on you. You got as much information as possible and you've gone by the predominant view, which is the ghalib al-dhan, as we call it within the fiqh. So you would now obviously shave the head or cut the hair. Better to shave the head, even if you've already shaved it before. Some people say, yeah, but I shaved my head after Umrah. My hair hasn't really grown back. There's only like a millimeter of growth. Is there any point shaving it again? Yes, shave it again. Because we know if a person is bald, for example, and has no hair, and only has maybe the hair on the sides, and even he should pass the blade on top of the skin over the bald head. So it is the practice of passing blade over the skin, not necessarily having hair to fall off it. Like, for example, when we keep a beard, it is the keeping of the beard, not necessarily of growing it out. Because if your beard doesn't grow out, then you can't say, oh, right, my beard doesn't grow out, so I can shave it. No, it is to leave the beard and as much as it can grow. And obviously, if it does grow out, and it goes beyond the fistful, and if a person wants to pull it back, then he may grab hold of his beard or the barber and trim it back to make sure from the sides and the edge it's a handful all the way around, and he can trim that back. But all he's been requested to do is to leave the beard. He cannot control its growth. He doesn't need to start putting fertilizer or whatever into his skin, or say, well, you know what, if I shave it a few times, maybe the hair will grow back. He should just leave it as it is. Okay, so he's done his shaving, he's done his trimming. And what I want to do is bring this back to literally one of the acts that we do after birth. So once a person, well, not literally after birth, but once a person or a baby has been born and it's gone through those early difficult stages, being born is, it's a unique experience. And, it's now trying to get used to the world, and there's a potential chance of getting bugs very early on because it's suddenly going into an environment which is a completely different environment that it's in. But within, after the 7 days, then the aim is that, and this person needs to be given identity, or this baby needs to be given identity. So basically, you will give it a name, and you'll also shave its head. Okay, remove whatever hair there is, and give the equivalent of silver in its weight. And that is to kind of say that the impurity that the baby had up until that point has been cleansed, and is now a new, fresh human. Similarly, when a person does Umrah or Hajj and he shaves his hair, it's like the day his mother gave birth to him. Okay, it's like the day his mother gave birth to him, because also after 7 days, his hair was shaved and removed from his head. And if you look at a baby is basically a version of somebody who's just come out of ihram, okay, cleanly shaved. And this is also in this particular position as well. So that's the aim, and that's the psychology that we want to bring into effect when we are completing our Hajj and completed our Umrah. That is the purpose, so that we are ready for the new time. So if we are now, and if we accept that we've now completed our Hajj, obviously Umrah is already done, we've all completed our Hajj now, we're now going to make the Tawaf. Once we've made the Tawaf, I've explained last week already about the Tawaf al-Ifada and Tawaf al-Wida wa ghera. So please go back to lecture 4 to find out what happens now. We hear this phrase, al-Hajj al-Mabrur. Okay, al-Hajj al-Mabrur. Mabrur means a Hajj full of bir. Bir normally means goodness, kindness, piety, those kind of things. You probably heard it in the phrase of birrul walidain. Okay, you've probably heard in the phrase of birrul walidain. So when one of the necessities or rights that a person should be aware of is being birrul walidain, meaning being good to his parents, showing them kindness, showing them mercy, not being thrifty with them, not being short-tongued, not being sharp-tongued, but treating them in the best way possible. That is birrul walidain. So when you look at al-Hajj al-Mabrur, it comes with the same root letters of Barara, which means a Hajj complete and full of goodness. So how do you know if your Hajj is Mabrur? Because al-Hajj al-Mabrur is one which is an accepted Hajj. That's number one. And number two, it's one in which you are now reset to zero. Well, one of the first ways of knowing if a person's Hajj itself is within the Hajj, meaning whilst you're performing the Hajj. So whilst you were performing the Hajj, what kind of things were you doing? So if you were doing things which you normally did when you were outside of Ihram, or you had the same kind of characteristic or the same behavior or the same kind of carefree attitude, then the signs are there that unfortunately your Hajj is not accepted. If on the other hand, in Hajj, you try to kind of be zoned out, try not to get triggered by anybody, try not to be baited by anybody, try not to, seeing people do something which you're not happy with, try not to kind of engage with it, smile and move on, remind the brother, we're in Hajj, I don't have anything to do with this, Assalamu alaikum, and move on. And mashallah, you're performing your tawafs comfortably, you did your sa'i, your time in Muzdalifah, your time in Mina, it's all gone well, and you're happy with how it's gone, and you're happy with the experience, then that's a sign. Okay, that's a sign that this is productive. The true sign will only be determined after you return. Okay, so whenever you've performed your Hajj, you're going back to the UK, or you're coming back to somewhere in Europe or the States, or in wherever you come from, and you engaging with life differently than the way you engaged with it before you went. Now, it's not the first week or so, because in the first week or so, you're wearing the jubba that you bought from the haram. Okay, you spend good money on it, you want to wear it, guests are coming, so you get the Zamzam water out, you bought some ornate kettle or jug, and you got some fancy little cups, and you want to make a big hoo-ha, and you've got like 10 different types of dates that you've put out there, and you're kind of bigging yourself up there, and like basically you're kind of making a big hoo-ha of things, and that's not necessarily a good sign. I'm not saying don't entertain your guests. What I'm saying here is that your focus is going onto something else. So everybody's going to be doing that literally the first 4 or 5 days. So that's not really a sign. You really see a sign of someone when they change behavior, and it is said that it takes about 60 days for a behavior to change, which means if you spent, I don't know, 2 weeks or 3 weeks in the haram, then that's 21 days, okay, which means another 39 days in the UK, you will need to continue that same practice in order for things to become a habit. Okay, so if you were praying regularly in the masjid, continue to do so. If you were reciting 4 or 5 juz of the Quran, continue to do so. If you're doing 2 or 3 hours of dhikr, continue to do so. If you avoided foul language, continue to do so. If you avoided doing this and it was a bad thing, continue to do so. If there was some good thing you were doing, and you should notice behavioral changes, because behavioral changes are means that you have changed. We can all not act, but we can all be, temporarily act in a certain way. We can all act in a certain way. Okay. And when you come from Hajj, there's this certain expectation that you have to act. You'll talk about what a great time it was, and how fantastic it was to look at the Kaaba, and how difficult it was, and all your stories in Muzdalifah and Mina, and all that, whatever. Once the week dies down, everybody's gone. Nobody's that interested in you anymore. You're old news, so to speak. And now you're in your own kind of environment, doing your own kind of thing. Now the acting stops, because we only act, unfortunately, in front of people. Now we want to see if there's behavioral changes. If there's behavioral changes, then that is al-Hajj al-Mabrur. Now, it might be that you're some muttaqi, pious, spiritual guy, mashallah, already. So you might not see that much of a change. Okay, there might be very small incremental change. So, but that person will already know where they are spiritually. They'll be aware of their spiritual state. Not exactly aware of their spiritual state, but they would have a good idea of their spiritual state. It's usually for those people who want to use this as a life-changing opportunity. They will sense a change. And why do you get this change? There's a very simple reason. You get this change because you went with sincerity. That's the simple line. You don't need long lectures, you don't need long kitabs, you don't need anything. If you went with sincerity, not because, I have to do this because it's fard, or excuse me, I have to do this because my wife has to go, or I have to do this because of X, Y, Z reason, or I have to do this because I'm getting old, and if I don't do this now, then I'll be too old and I have to go in a wheelchair, whatever the other rationales are, then that means even though you've completed the fard act of Hajj, it lacks sincerity. Okay, it lacks sincerity. And therefore, when something like this lacks sincerity, then it's not life-changing. But if a person went with absolute sincerity, they realized the errors of their way. They realized that the lifestyle that they'd been leading was a wrong lifestyle. They realized that the things they'd been doing were wrong. They realized that the things that they should have been doing that they weren't doing was wrong. And they have remorse and they have regret and they want to make a change. And they use this opportunity and they do make that change, then there's glad tidings to those brothers and sisters, because to those brothers and sisters, that Hajj was accepted. And what does that mean, having your Hajj accepted? Of course, we want our Hajj accepted. Of course, we want our Salah accepted. Of course, we want our Qurbani accepted. Of course, we want our Dhikr accepted. Of course, we want our lectures accepted. Of course, we want everything good deed we do accepted. Of course, we do. Why wouldn't we want our Hajj accepted? Well, if the Hajj is accepted, then you become like that baby that I just gave the analogy to, that was born and had his hair removed. You become like a newborn baby. That does not mean that you go around in a nappy and make silly noises. What that means is that your past sins have been forgotten, have been wiped clear. Your slate has been wiped clear. Now, of course, those to do with the rights of others, you should have cleared that before you flew off. Okay. Now, there is within some cultures, it happens a little bit in our culture as well, that when somebody's going for Hajj, they just go around seeing people saying, oh, I'm going to Hajj, forgive me. I'm going to Hajj, forgive me. I'm going to Hajj, forgive me. And it's just like a kind of an autopilot thing that, should be done. Nah, you know when you've done something wrong to somebody. Okay. You know when you've done something wrong to somebody. So you should go and ask forgiveness for that thing that you did wrong. And if you didn't do that thing wrong, but you know that you've had an issue with this person, you don't get on with this person, or you don't see eye to eye with this person, and because of that you've transgressed, because he's better than you, or he's got more money than you, or whatever, and as a result of that, jealousy has affected you. And when jealousy has affected you, you've hated on him, you've talked behind his back, you've done something, then you have to go and apologize to that person. Because if you don't, and he has to accept your apology, and he has to forgive you, he's not under any obligation to forgive you. Okay, he's not under any obligation to forgive you. It is recommended to him to forgive you, but he's not under obligation to forgive you, because he may choose not to. He may say, no, I do not forgive you. So what do you do then? So you're in a scenario now. So that's what you should have done already. So now all you've got left is between you and between Allah. And because this was a Hajjul Mabrur, and it was an accepted Hajj, and you know that because of your behavior when you came back, then that means those sins are gone. If you have genuinely gone to people before you went for Hajj, and you've asked them for your forgiveness and said to you, look, I've done your ghibat, I've hated on you, I've been jealous of you, please forgive me. Right? And that person is hurt. So that person says, no, brother, I can't forgive you. Or no, sister, I can't forgive you. Because you didn't do it once, you didn't do it twice, you didn't do it 3 times. You've done it 10, 15 times to me. And then you come to me and say, please forgive me. And I forgive you. And then you do it again to me. So I'm sick and tired of it. I know you're going for Hajj. And I know it is something recommended to me that I should. But you've hurt me too much. I'm not interested. Okay, I'm not interested. All right. So this person goes. And he was genuine. He came genuinely. He cried to the brother. This time he really wanted to make a change. But that's the saying, isn't it? When you cry wolf, people stop believing in you when you've done it so many times, where you ask for forgiveness and then you do the same thing again. You ask for forgiveness and you do the same thing again. After a while, people get tired of it. So this person now will ask Allah on Arafat, Muzdalifah, Mina, anywhere he is, and say, Ya Allah, I did wrong to this brother. I know that. I admit that. I also went to see this brother before I came for Hajj. This brother did not accept my apology. And this brother did not forgive me. Now, I want my Hajj to be accepted in all shapes and form. So, Ya Allah, soften this brother's heart to me. So either he forgives me in his heart, even though he didn't to my face, or when I return, he says, I have forgiven you. Or Allah, the harm I've done to him, put in his good deeds the equivalent reward. Okay. And let me give some reward for him, and then make some isal thawab. So either recite some Quran, perform a nafal, do a tawaf, give an extra animal qurbani, and say, Ya Allah, put this in that brother's good deeds, because he won't forgive me because I've hurt him too much. He doesn't want to give me the time of day anymore. And I'm hoping either you change his heart and he forgives me whilst he's in the UK and I'm here, or if he's not going to have a change of heart, then I'm going to perform a good deed and I want you to give that to him. Why we do this? The reason being is we want to come back and we want to be forgiven by the humans and we want to be forgiven by Allah. That's why we do it. Okay, that's why we do it. Now, you can act all bravado and tough guy, and you can be all this, macho man, and you can say, oh, I don't need his forgiveness, to hell with his forgiveness, da-da-da-da-da, and all of that sort of stuff, yeah? But trust me, that's because you might be relatively young, you might be financially stable, you might be fairly strong, so you think you can handle what life is going to throw at you. But fast forward and you're an 80-year-old, you'll understand how weak you are. That's how we're going to be even in a more weakened state on the Day of Judgment. On a more weakened state. At that time, the pride will disappear, the ego will disappear. Because right now, it's the pride, it's the ego, it's the shaitan oiling the wheels, blowing in our sails, and putting fuel on the fire and giving us that encouragement. Nah, ignore him. Who's he think he is? Don't, you're smarter than him. Who's he, acting like he knows it all? Forget this guy. They're all full of it, whispering continuously, and you're just kind of heading down this route, on fuming and thinking, yeah, absolutely, because what the shaitan is telling you is making you happy. You're on the right here. I don't even know what he's on about. What is he on about? He doesn't know what he's talking about. Look what you do and look what he does. You're on, and it's just filling your head in with these delusions, confusing this person, and you get in there. And sometimes a person feels that people have done wrong to them. And when people have done wrong to them, they look around and they see them that they're successful. And it annoys them. They think, subhanAllah, I'm doing good to these brothers, or I'm doing good to these sisters. They're doing bad to me, right? They're doing so much bad to me. But when I look, they're living the life of Riley. Okay, life is good for them. I'm struggling. I'm really struggling as a consequence of what they've done to me. They've taken my inheritance, for example. That inheritance I was supposed to receive. They've taken that inheritance. As a result, they're living in a better house than me. They're driving a better car than me. Life is comfortable for them. For me, it was my inheritance. I haven't got it. I'm struggling. And that's not right. And then shaitan, as I said, comes in. He oils the wheels. He blows in the sails. Okay, he puts fuel on the fire. And he says, you're right. Those thieving, conniving, so on and so's. You need to get back at them. What, are you going to just sit here? SubhanAllah. Allah gives you the right to take it back from them. They've usurped it. You can take it back. It's your right. And, builds you up with fumes and whatever. And then, you want to go and knock on the door and whatever. Okay. And do what you got to do. We cannot exclude Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from any equation. As soon as what shaitan will do is to whisper to you and exclude Allah out of the equation. And when he excludes Allah out of the equation, it just becomes a matter between us and them. Oh, they did that to me, I'm going to do this to you. But when you bring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala back in the equation and you sit back for a little bit, and in this sort of weather, take a cool drink, you realize it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has planned all taqdeer. And it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who sees all. And it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is aware of all. And everything is being documented. The Kiram and Katibin are documenting everything. Everything is recorded. Everything will be made apparent. And sometimes, because we become deluded, sometimes we don't see our little bits that we might have been doing. And we only see what the other person has been doing, because naturally, psychologically, shaitan is going to defend you because he wants you to commit sin. He can't influence that guy. His other mate is influencing that guy. His other shaitan mate is influencing that guy. This shaitan's job is to influence you. So he's always going to say you're right and they're wrong. This shaitan is never going to say to you that you're wrong and they're right. And his shaitan is going to be saying to him, he's wrong and you're right. And that's how the shaitans work. They work together like this. It's a collaboration. So everybody is right and everybody is wrong. Which, how can that be? Because according to some shaitan, so someone's shaitan, you're wrong. And according to your shaitan, you're right and they're wrong. So basically what I'm saying is, according to all the shayateen, everybody is wrong and everybody is right. How can that even make sense? How can that even make sense? So really, those are the telltale signs that when you come back, you see the bigger picture. You believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greater plan. You accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greater plan. You submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greater plan. You become a leaf, okay, on the stream, in the stream. Do not become a pebble or a branch in the stream. Become a leaf. The people of Tasawwuf say, and the people of spirituality will say, that even though a tree looks big and strong, a tree, when you look at it, looks big and strong, and a blade of grass looks small and weak. A blade of grass can be eaten by a rabbit, yet a tree, even a rhinoceros is going to struggle to knock a tree down, especially if it's a decent sized tree. So everybody's going to think, I'd rather be a tree than be a blade of grass. But when the winds come, when the plan of Allah comes, what continues to stay upright? The tree or the blade of grass? The blade of grass continues to stay upright. The tree collapses. Why? Because the blade of grass submits itself to a greater power. The blade of grass submits itself to a greater power, the wind. Whereas the tree is arrogant and stubborn and thinks he is tough. So because it stood against anyone else, the rabbit went bouncing off, the goat went bouncing off, even the rhinoceros bounced off him. He thinks, I'm the guy. Well, the tree version of the guy. And therefore, when a greater power comes, he still thinks, oh, well, I've overcome all these other things that I've come across. I'll overcome this as well. And he gets uprooted. So be the blade of grass. So similarly, in the greater plan of Allah, his greater power, it's his plan, be that blade of grass. At least you should have better realization when you return for Hajj. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all the good deeds that all of you have performed and I have performed in these days as we come to the end of the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Tomorrow will be Eid, alhamdulillah, for all of us here in the UK, as it will be for those in the Haram or around the Haram. And therefore we will be eating. I hope you have planned your udhiyah. Remember, the udhiyah has to be done after Eid Salah in the location of the udhiyah, not where your location is. So if you should do it in the UK, I encourage people to do it in the UK. Obviously, if you're in the UK, there's no point doing it in the UK. If you're in Canada, that would be silly. So if you're in the UK, I encourage you to do it in the UK. Why? Because it's a sunnah to eat the meat of the Qurban, yani udhiyah. And if you're a father or a mother and you've got young children, they need to experience it. Otherwise, I remember all that my history or my connection with Qurbani is because as a child, going with my father, for those of you who know those kind of yellow ghee boxes, which would split your hand when you'd hold them. Later on, they put a little black plastic thing to make it easier to hold. But in the good old days, when I was carrying it from the meat shop, they literally split your hand. You'd carry them. And then my mother would be splitting it into little piles. And then me and my brother would be given piles, and we'd start from the bottom of Hanover Square and work our way all the way around distributing this meat. So it's lasted with me from as a child. And then obviously, similarly, when I became a father and I had young children, they experienced it as well. So it's one you should try to do here, especially in houses where all of us are earning, really. So you might have 4 or 5 people in the house earning. So do at least one here. And then obviously, if you've got projects elsewhere, like we have those projects in Fiqhour in Peshawar, where we've got hospitals and darulooms and orphanages. So then we can do some there. So at least those students who rarely get a chance to eat meat can also eat meat as well. Or if there's a particular project that you're involved in some other country, then you may do that as well. So in that way, you're doing the third, but you're doing it, in a holistic way, as in one animal. Obviously, Eid Salah, I'm sure you will know the mas'ala of Eid Salah. I will allow you to listen to the scholar tomorrow morning. Make sure you take one route there, one route back. Takbir can be in a somewhat audible voice as well. And you remember, each step you take, try not to, everybody drives in cars, mashallah, and blocks every possibility of people getting access. So walk there, walk back. That each step you take, there is reward and a reduction of sin. So, take benefit from that. It is permissible to give the takbir tashriq after Eid Salah as well. So one may partake in that. It's now become a practice of the Muslims, so hence it's been brought into the kind of in the deen itself. And then I've given sort of the broad idea. Obviously, we talk about these 6 extra takbeers that you do, which is wajib. You perform the Eid Salah first, 3 extra takbeers in Thana in the first rakat, and 3 extra takbeers at the end of the second rakat before you go into ruku. 6 in total. You listen to the 2 khutbahs after the Eid Salah. There may be a short lecture in the language where you are beforehand. And that's it. And then you may part, and that's it. Inshallah, we will be back. Obviously, we'll be back to our normal schedule. But before I do, let me just quickly check. I know there was at least one question which had come on to the chats. So let me see what that question was. I believe it was on the ladies group. And the question was, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Mufti Mufti for Udhiyah. Is it permissible for someone to pay on your behalf and you pay them back when you have the money after? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. So Udhiyah only becomes wajib if you have the finances, if you have the nisab on the days of Qurbani. If you do have assets, but you don't have the cash available and you just get the cash off someone to pay back later, there's no harm. But remember, it is only triggered if you have wealth above nisab. So make sure you understand that. No more questions on the ladies group. Let me check the gents group. No questions that I can see on the gents group. So that's that, inshallah. So yeah, so that brings us to the close of our Hajj series. May Allah accept it from us. May Allah accept all the chaps and chapesses behind us who do all the hard work in organizing this. Another alhamdulillah portion done. It kind of enters a relatively quiet period within the Islamic calendar because we have Ramadan, and after Ramadan we have Shawwal, then we have Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah. So we have 3-4 months in which we're kind of like, and before that we have Sha'ban, where we're kind of religiously engaged. We now come to a period where things go relatively quiet. So if you do not have a plan, then you have planned to fail. Okay, so make sure you have some tartib for these next few months after Eid is gone, because it's going to be a long time if you're just going to wait for Ramadan as a pickup. So you need to make sure that you have something scheduled, whether it's lessons, whether it's some work of deen or whatever it is. Get a schedule, otherwise you're going to dip back down again. You're going to have regret. You're going to feel bad. You're going to regress, and then you're going to have, and then there's nothing to change. So make sure there's a plan or strategy in place. We will be back with Fiqh Hour at our normal day on Wednesdays. As to when that will be based upon, like we always do, which is on the questions. So you have access to Markaz al-Ifta wal-Qāḍī gents group and Markaz al-Ifta wal-Qāḍī ladies group. So please post your questions on there. When I get a reasonable number, then I do a live the following Wednesday at 6 p.m. So that's how we will progress, inshallah. All the best. Enjoy your Eid. And remember, don't forget Allah. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.